Do you have any thoughts on GameJournoPros?
Uh, I don't really remember what that was, so I
Uh,
guess not.
it was a mailing list, like like an email conversation list between I don't remember the exact number. It was almost 150, not 150, but close. Games journalists from different publications where they were communicating with one another. And in at
I
least
get,
two instances, they did engage in what some people might call, sorry, some individuals on the list engaged in in behavior that some people might call blacklisting. In one case, against a games journalist, and in one case against a game developer.
um, I guess like the concept of there being a, how should I say? It is not foreign to me that there might be industry societies of sorts, like little um, discussion groups or like organizations or email lists or whatever. Like, it doesn't strike me as being terribly nefarious. It just kind of seems like a thing industries do. Is that there is some um, industry that is set up, I suppose, and some thing like that. So it doesn't strike me as like being inherently bad. And whether or not like any of the individual called out things like the blacklisting of X, Y, and Z or whatever, I suppose that would depend on whether or not in those scenarios the response to behaviors were warranted.
One of them was the Alistair Pinsoff situation, um, I believe, and then the other one, I forget the game developer's name or even what was involved with him. But one of the games journalists on the list was basically saying, "Fuck this guy, never work with him again."
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly
Oh,
what he did or what he was accused of doing, if anything. It might have just been like a personal beef. I don't know.
because there's lots of like ways I can see something that being justified. So I would hesitate to like condemn the practice in a blanket statement. It's like there is some room for what's the word I'm looking for? Discretion, I suppose, for managing these sorts of things. And I wouldn't really be able to say that one is doing it one way or the other is like bad, having the emailing list or not.
Do you,
Mm.
do you think that there's like an issue though where there's like a few different like issues like potential for groupthink or these games journalists either all adopting consciously or unconsciously like each other's views because they're talking all the time, even though they work for different websites that are supposedly competitors with one another. And like there's just like it seems like there's a lot that can go wrong, whether that's like colluding to promote stories or blacklisting, or even just like groupthink. Like I don't think it would even if all they did in there was being like, "LOL, this new Call of Duty game's a 10 out of 10. I'm gonna give it that." And you're like, you know what? I feel like that's a 10 out of 10 too. Let's all do that. Like even like stuff like that, I feel like that's pretty bad. Like not I don't think the Call of Duty thing didn't happen, to be clear, as far as I'm aware. But like it seems like there's a lot of potential like bad things that can go along wrong with that to me.
Mm. Let's say that any sort of venue for collaboration between people of industries might always have the potential for something like that. Sure, like there's industry events in like the tech field or whatever. You might have a what's the freaking I'm blanking. What's the Las Vegas thing where they have all the
Oh, E3.
not E3, like the more just like general tech one. Uh, we have like TVs and stuff in there.
Oh, the Consumer Electronics Expo or whatever. They have a name for it. CES maybe, I don't know.
CS, yeah, CS, I think. Like anything like that where like everyone's getting together and being buddy buddy and having drinks or whatever. Like there's always room for like this or that or the other. Um, I just don't know how concerned it is to and to like what end. Like, is it that we would mandate everyone be an island unto themselves and no one discusses things with each other? Um, it strikes me as odd, and I'm sort of less concerned about groupthink sorts of things. Um, like putting that into words is a little challenging at this time
Oh, you're fine.
because sometimes there's just it's an extension of something I mentioned earlier, which is that sometimes, in fact, I feel my my feelings is that most contentions that exist in society, there's almost always one side that's right. There might be some wiggle room in things, but a lot of the times there is a conclusion that can be had, and that a bunch of people find that all independently seem to come to the conclusion that 2 plus 2 equals 4. That doesn't really necessarily strike me as nefarious. Um, yeah.
If sorry, if there's I don't know if I agree that there's like
Mm.
one answer to like most things. I think that like some things are obviously like objectively true or not. Or well, sorry, fuck, I should probably word this like way differently. Some things are probably we have good reasons to think that they are true. Like we have like a lot of scientific evidence that gravity is real, right?
Mhm.
And so like that's like seems like a pretty firm scientific understanding. And like of course like science is a process of discovering the truth. So like could there theoretically be some like alternative explanation? Theoretically, sure, possible. Um, but like I think we can say with like a high degree of certainty that gravity is real. But like a
Mhm.
lot of other things, it seems like it comes from different like moral or philosophical perspectives, and like I don't know if there's like just one true moral or philosophical viewpoint. I think that like part of living in our society, in a pluralistic society with people with like widely different views, is that like we have to accept that like people are going to have different moral frameworks to some extent, and that's like probably okay as long as they like agree to abide by certain rules, like don't kill each other, don't try to overthrow the government, things like that.
Mhm. Um, I think like any two, how should I say? If you think about the sort of classic dichotomy of like security versus freedom, like it's two different values that are sort of at odds often, and any consideration to be judged against those, you're sort of prioritizing your value for security versus your value for freedom. And the answer is like, is this subject for consideration on the table? Is that objectively going to optimize for security? Is that objectively going to optimize for freedom? That is sort of that can be determined sort of objectively, I feel. Um, but then it comes to like, in this situation, ought one value freedom or ought one value security? Um, that's where it gets a little more weak, where all the rubber meets the road. That's where a lot of the contentions happen. And I feel that for lots of these arguments can be made that, yeah, for this consideration, we ought to prioritize freedom. And you can say why. And I feel like a lot of those discussions can also sort of be decided. And again, this gets a little more interesting when you have those conversations about values, as opposed to just conversations about facts. Because again, for facts, there's always is just a fact of the matter. But when it comes to values, that's where it gets a little more tricky. But I do feel in the end like there's, yeah, I suppose it's hard because you have to boil it down eventually back to axioms. Because if you want to prioritize human happiness as opposed to someone who might prioritize like religious adherence, like then conclusions get weird. But yeah, I guess I'm an atheist, so I don't really do that.
Well, it seems like maybe the reason like the Gamergate thing blew up in part is because there was this big dichotomy. Like there were a lot of different like fundamental moral or philosophical positions that like one could take, like artistic freedom versus social responsibility for game developers, or
Mm.
anonymity. Like, what do we think of anonymity as a concept in society? There's good sides, there's downsides, there's free speech. What do we think of that? You know, a lot of these things, there's like not really a like firm like answer. I don't think it's like objectively the case that like anonymity is good. I think that like there's a lot of good aspects of an anonymity, including like good aspects that a lot of the people who might be more skeptical of it could theoretically see value in. Like they might not value anonymity in the world we live in today, but they would if we lived in the world of 1984.
Right. Mm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely conversations where it get more complicated. Um,
Hi, I'm Tachyon Blue. Thank you for watching another one of my GamerGate book video segments. Altogether, I've interviewed over 70 people involved with GamerGate, and I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter campaign in the coming weeks. So please, I need your support to help make this project a reality. I'm turning these 70 plus interviews into a multi volume series of books, the first volume of which is already completed. And so I'd like you to please stay tuned for more information about the Kickstarter. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment. More updates will be coming in the near future. Thank you, and take care.